The rain was relentless, hammering the windshield of Riley's beat-up Chevy as she gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white, her heart a war drum. She was 28, chasing a dream she could barely afford, and tonight, her family had drawn a line in the sand: love her, or love their comfort. By the time she pulled into the diner's parking lot, her phone was buzzing with texts she didn't want to read, her mother's pleas, her brother's accusations, all because she'd said no for the first time in years. Riley had always been the provider. Growing up in a crumbling house on the edge of Columbus, Ohio, she'd learned early that love came with a price tag. Her mother, Diane, a single parent with a penchant for bad decisions, leaned on Riley's part-time jobs as a teenager to keep the lights on. Her younger brother, Ethan, followed suit, his charm masking a habit of borrowing without repaying. When Riley came out at 19, their acceptance felt like a miracle: hugs, tears, promises of unconditional love. But miracles, she'd learned, had fine print. As long as she paid the bills, bought Ethan's car, covered Mom's rent, they called her family. The moment she stopped, the truth clawed its way out. She stepped into the diner, the bell above the door jingling like a warning. The place was a relic: checkered floors, neon signs, the smell of burnt coffee and grease. Riley slid into a booth, her damp jacket clinging to her shoulders, and scanned the room. That's when she saw her, Ava, the woman who'd been her anchor and her storm for the past year. Ava, 27, with her golden hair spilling over a cream-colored sweater, sat across the diner, her sketchbook open, pencil dancing across the page. Riley's chest tightened. Ava was the reason she'd finally said no to her family. She'd chosen love over obligation, and now she was terrified it wouldn't be enough. Ava looked up, her green eyes catching Riley's like a lifeline. She closed her sketchbook and crossed the room, sliding into the booth across from Riley. "You look like you've been through a war," Ava said, her voice soft but steady, the kind that could calm a hurricane. "Feels like it," Riley muttered, running a hand through her cropped hair. "They cut me off, Ava. Mom said I'm betraying the family because I won't pay her credit card bill this month. Ethan called me selfish. Selfish. After everything I've given them." Ava reached across the table, her fingers brushing Riley's. The touch was electric, grounding. "You're not selfish for wanting a life," Ava said. "You've been carrying them for years. It's time they stand on their own." Riley wanted to believe her, but doubt gnawed at her. She'd spent a decade building a life as a freelance graphic designer, scraping by to send money home while her own dreams, her art, her future with Ava, took a backseat. Coming out had been her first act of courage. Falling for Ava was her second. Ava, an art teacher with a quiet strength and a laugh that felt like sunlight, had shown Riley what love could be. Not a transaction, but a choice. Yet the weight of her family's expectations pressed harder than ever. The diner's jukebox kicked on, playing an old Fleetwood Mac song, and Riley let herself sink into the moment. Ava's hand was still on hers, warm and sure. "I don't know how to do this," Riley admitted. "I've always been the one who fixes things. What if I'm not enough without the money?" Ava's eyes softened, but there was fire in them too. "You're enough, Riley. You always have been. They're the ones who need to figure that out." The words hit like a punch, stirring something fierce in Riley. She wanted to believe Ava, wanted to build a life where love didn't come with a ledger. But her phone buzzed again, another text from Ethan. "You're abandoning us. Hope you're happy with her." Riley's jaw clenched. She'd spent years proving her worth to her family, but the truth was stark. Their acceptance was conditional, tied to her bank account. As the rain pounded outside, Riley looked at Ava, her heart caught between fear and hope. She'd chosen this woman, this life, but the cost was higher than she'd imagined. Her family's love had been a house of cards, and she just pulled the first one. What would happen when it all came crashing down? The diner's warmth wrapped around them, a temporary shield against the storm. Ava squeezed Riley's hand, her voice barely above a whisper. "We'll figure it out together, okay? You and me." Riley nodded, her throat tight. She didn't know if she was ready for what came next, but with Ava beside her, she felt the first flicker of something new. Freedom. The kind that came from choosing herself, even if it meant losing everything else. The night stretched on, and Riley began to tell Ava about the fight, how her mother had cried, how Ethan had slammed the door, how she'd driven through the rain to escape the guilt. Ava listened, her presence a quiet strength, and Riley felt the weight of her decision settle in. She wasn't just fighting for herself, she was fighting for them, for a future where love didn't demand sacrifice. By the time they left the diner, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. Riley glanced at Ava, her silhouette framed against the neon glow of the diner sign. "I'm scared," Riley admitted, her voice raw. Ava smiled, soft and fierce. "Good. That means it's real." They walked into the night, hand in hand, the world uncertain but theirs to face. Riley didn't know if her family would ever forgive her, but for the first time, she wasn't sure she needed them to. The road ahead was hers to choose, and she'd chosen Ava. Riley woke to the sound of her phone buzzing on the nightstand, a relentless reminder of the world she'd tried to leave behind in the diner. It was 6 a.m., and the pale light of dawn crept through the blinds of Ava's small apartment in downtown Columbus. Ava was still asleep, her breathing soft, her arm draped across Riley's waist like an anchor. For a moment, Riley let herself linger in the warmth of it, the quiet safety of being with someone who saw her for who she was, not what she could pay for. But the phone buzzed again, and reality crashed in. She grabbed it, squinting at the screen. 5 missed calls from her mother, 3 from Ethan, and a string of texts that grew sharper with each word. "You're breaking Mom's heart," Ethan had written. "How could you do this to us?" Riley's stomach twisted. She'd stopped sending money 2 weeks ago, redirecting her savings to a new art project she and Ava were working on, a community mural that could finally put her name on the map. It was the first time she'd invested in herself, and her family was making her pay for it in guilt. She slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Ava, and padded to the kitchen. The apartment was small but vibrant, filled with Ava's sketches and Riley's half-finished designs pinned to the walls. It felt like a home, more than her family's house ever had. She brewed coffee, the bitter scent grounding her, and replayed last night's conversation. Ava had been right. Riley had carried her family for too long. But knowing that didn't erase the ache of their rejection. By the time Ava joined her, the sun was higher, casting golden streaks across the hardwood floor. "You're up early," Ava said, her voice groggy but warm. She wore an oversized t-shirt, her hair a messy cascade, and Riley's heart did that familiar flip. "Couldn't sleep," Riley admitted, handing Ava a mug. "They won't stop. Mom's threatening to show up at my studio if I don't call her back." Ava's brow furrowed, but she didn't flinch. "Let her come. You don't owe her an explanation for living your life." Riley wanted to believe it was that simple, but her mother's voice echoed in her head. Years of, "You're the strong one, Riley. We need you." She'd believed it, internalized it, until Ava came along and showed her that strength didn't mean sacrifice. Ava, who'd grown up in a small town outside Cincinnati, had her own scars. Parents who'd called her confused when she came out at 16, friends who'd drifted away. Yet she'd built a life on her own terms, teaching art to kids, finding beauty in the cracks of the world. Riley envied that resilience, craved it. They spent the morning working on the mural design, sketching ideas on a shared canvas. The project was for a community center in a struggling neighborhood, a chance to tell stories of resilience through art. Riley's hands moved with purpose, sketching bold lines of a woman breaking free from chains, while Ava added softer touches, flowers blooming in the background, symbols of hope. It was their first collaboration, a testament to the life they wanted to build. But every stroke of Riley's pencil felt like a rebellion against her family's expectations. Around noon, Riley's phone rang again. This time, she answered. "Mom, I can't do this right now," she said, her voice sharper than intended. Diane's voice crackled through the line, thick with tears. Riley, how could you abandon us? After everything we've been through? I accepted you, didn't I? When you told us about her? Riley's grip tightened on the phone. You accepted me as long as I kept paying for everything. That's not love, Mom. That's a deal. The line went silent. Then Diane's voice hardened. You're choosing that girl over your own blood. Don't expect us to wait forever. The call ended, and Riley felt the air leave her lungs. Ava was beside her in an instant, her hand on Riley's shoulder. You okay? No, Riley said, her voice breaking. But I'm trying to be. That afternoon, they drove to the community center to meet with the director, a kind woman named Maria who believed in their vision. The center was a patchwork of hope, faded paint, creaky floors, but alive with kids' laughter and the hum of possibility. Maria led them to the blank wall where the mural would go, and Riley felt a spark of purpose. This was bigger than her family's drama, bigger than her fear. She and Ava spent hours discussing colors, themes, the stories they'd weave into the art. For the first time in weeks, Riley felt like she was building something that mattered. But as they left the center, Riley's phone lit up again. A text from Ethan. Mom's sick. She needs you. Don't be a stranger. No details, no explanation, just enough to twist the knife. Riley's first instinct was to call back, to fix it, to fall back into the role she'd played for years. But Ava's hand found hers, grounding her. You don't have to go, Ava said softly. You can choose yourself. Riley stared at the text, her heart torn. She wanted to believe her mother was sick, wanted to rush to her side. But she'd heard this before, cries for help that always came with a request for cash. She looked at Ava, at the mural sketches tucked under her arm, and made a choice. I'm not going, Riley said, her voice trembling but firm. Not this time. Ava's smile was small but radiant, like a sunrise after a long night. They drove back to the apartment, the city blurring past, and Riley felt the weight of her decision settle in. She was choosing Ava, choosing herself, but the cost was a family she'd spent her life trying to hold together. As they curled up on the couch that night, Ava sketching beside her, Riley wondered if she'd made the right call. The answer wasn't clear, but for now, Ava's warmth was enough. The next week was a blur of paint and tension. Riley and Ava threw themselves into the mural, spending long days at the community center, their hands stained with color, their laughter mingling with the kids who watched in awe. The wall was coming alive, a vibrant tapestry of figures breaking free, hands reaching for the sky, flowers blooming in defiance. Riley felt alive in a way she hadn't in years, but every night, her phone reminded her of the cost. Ethan's texts grew angrier, Diane's voicemails more desperate. You're tearing us apart, one said. We need you, Riley. Don't do this. Riley tried to focus on the mural, on Ava's steady presence, but guilt was a shadow she couldn't shake. She'd always been the fixer, the one who paid the bills, who kept the family afloat. Now, she was the villain in their story, and it cut deeper than she'd expected. Ava noticed the strain, the way Riley's smiles faltered, the way she checked her phone when she thought no one was looking. One evening, as they cleaned their brushes under the center's flickering lights, Ava spoke up. You're carrying too much, she said, her voice gentle but firm. You can't keep living for them. Riley scrubbed a brush harder than necessary, paint flecking her jeans. I know, but it's not that easy. They're my family, Ava. They're all I've got. Ava set her brush down, stepping closer. They're not all you've got. You have me. You have this. She gestured to the mural, its colors glowing even in the dim light. You have a future you're building. Don't let them take that away. Riley wanted to argue, to say that family wasn't something you could just walk away from. But Ava's words hit home. She'd spent years proving her worth to her mother and brother, thinking their love was tied to her identity as the provider. Coming out as gay had been her first rebellion. Choosing Ava was her second. Now, she was learning that love, real love, didn't demand a paycheck. The next day, Riley made a decision. She called a family meeting, driving to her mother's house on the outskirts of Columbus. The house was the same as always, peeling paint, overgrown lawn, a monument to survival. Diane opened the door, her face pale, her eyes red from crying or exhaustion or both. Ethan was there too, slouched on the couch, his jaw tight. The air was thick with tension, and Riley felt like she was walking into a courtroom. "I'm not here to fight," Riley said, standing in the living room, her voice steady despite the knot in her chest. "I need you to hear me. I've given everything to this family, my money, my time, my dreams. I can't do it anymore." Diane's face crumpled. "We accepted you, Riley. When you told us you were, we didn't turn you away. And this is how you repay us." Riley's heart ached, but she held her ground. "You accepted me as long as I paid for it. That's not acceptance. That's a transaction." Ethan stood, his voice sharp. "So, you're just gonna ditch us for your girlfriend? Real nice, Riley. Mom's sick, and you're out there painting pictures." "Is she sick?" Riley asked, her voice breaking. "Or is this another way to pull me back in? Because I've heard it before, Ethan. Every time I try to live my life, there's a crisis." The room went silent. Diane looked away, her hands twisting in her lap. Ethan's face reddened, but he didn't answer. The truth hung between them, raw and undeniable. Riley's chest tightened, but she kept going. "I love you both, but I can't be your bank account anymore. I'm building something with Ava, something real. I need you to respect that." Diane's voice was barely a whisper. "You're choosing her over us." "No," Riley said, her voice firm. "I'm choosing me." She left the house, her heart pounding, her hands shaking as she gripped the steering wheel. The drive back to Ava's apartment felt like a lifetime, the city lights blurring through tears she hadn't realized she was holding. When she walked through the door, Ava was there, waiting with open arms. Riley fell into them, the weight of the day crashing over her. "They didn't listen," Riley said, her voice muffled against Ava's shoulder. "They think I'm abandoning them." Ava held her tighter. "You're not abandoning them. You're setting boundaries. That's what love looks like sometimes." They spent the night talking, curled up on the couch, the mural sketches spread across the coffee table. Riley felt raw, exposed, but Ava's presence was a balm. They talked about the future, about the mural, about moving in together, about a life where Riley's worth wasn't measured in dollars. For the first time, Riley let herself imagine it, let herself believe it was possible. The next morning, they returned to the community center, the mural nearly complete. Kids from the neighborhood gathered around, their eyes wide as Riley and Ava added the final touches, a burst of color, a figure reaching for the stars. Maria, the director, clapped her hands, beaming. "This is going to mean so much to these kids," she said. "You're showing them they can dream big." Riley looked at Ava, her heart swelling. This was what she'd been fighting for. Not just a mural, but a life where she could create, love, and be herself without apology. Her family's rejection still stung, but it was starting to feel like a price she could pay. The mural's unveiling was set for Saturday, and Riley threw herself into the final preparations, trying to outrun the ache in her chest. The community center buzzed with excitement. Kids helped hang decorations, Maria coordinated volunteers, and Ava's laughter filled the air as she taught a group of teens how to mix paint. Riley watched her, marveling at how Ava could make any moment feel like home. But every time her phone stayed silent, the absence of her family felt like a fresh wound. She hadn't heard from Diane or Ethan since the confrontation. Part of her was relieved. No more guilt trips, no more demands. But another part, the part that still remembered her mother's rare smiles or Ethan's childhood hugs, mourned the loss. She'd spent years believing their acceptance was real, that their love for her as a gay woman was unconditional. Now, she saw it for what it was. A fragile truce, broken the moment she stopped paying. On Friday night, Riley and Ava stayed late at the center, touching up the mural under the glow of work lights. The wall was a masterpiece, bold figures in vibrant hues, their hands intertwined, breaking free from chains of doubt and fear. Riley had poured her heart into it, every stroke a defiance of the expectations that had held her back. Ava stepped back, admiring their work, and slipped her arm around Riley's waist. "This is us," Ava said, her voice soft. "Every line, every color. It's our story." Riley leaned into her, the warmth of Ava's touch easing the knot in her chest. "I wish they could see it," she admitted. "Not just the mural, but me. Who I am now." Ava turned to face her, her eyes fierce. "They will, Riley. Maybe not today, but someday. And if they don't, that's their loss. You're incredible." Riley wanted to believe her, but the doubt lingered. She'd built her identity around being the provider, the one who held her family together. Without that role, who was she? Ava seemed to sense the question, because she pulled Riley closer, her lips brushing Riley's forehead. "You're enough," she whispered. "Just as you are." The unveiling was a whirlwind. The community center was packed. Kids, parents, local artists, all gathered to see the mural. Riley stood beside Ava, her heart racing as Maria gave a speech about resilience and hope. When the curtain dropped, revealing the mural, the crowd erupted in applause. Riley's chest swelled with pride, but her eyes scanned the room, searching for faces that weren't there. Her family hadn't come. After the event, Riley and Ava lingered, helping clean up. A young girl, maybe 13, approached them, her eyes shy but bright. "I love the mural," she said. "It makes me feel like I can be me. You know." Riley's throat tightened. She saw herself in the girl's hesitant smile, the weight of unspoken truths. "You can," Riley said, her voice steady. "Whoever you are, you're enough." The girl beamed and ran off, and Ava squeezed Riley's hand. "See? You're making a difference." That night, they celebrated at a small bar near Ava's apartment, surrounded by friends from the art community. The air was warm, filled with laughter and clinking glasses, but Riley's mind kept drifting. She checked her phone, no messages. The silence was louder than any argument. When they got home, Ava pulled out her sketchbook, flipping to a drawing she'd been working on. Two women, hands clasped, standing against a backdrop of stars. "This is us," she said, echoing her words from the night before. "No matter what happens, we're in this together." Riley traced the lines of the sketch, her fingers lingering on the intertwined hands. "I want this," she said, her voice raw. "I want us. But I'm scared I'll lose them forever." Ava set the sketchbook down, her hands cupping Riley's face. "You might. And that's okay. Because you're not alone. You have me, and I'm not going anywhere." They kissed, slow and certain, and Riley felt the world shift. She'd spent so long chasing her family's approval, believing it defined her. But here, in Ava's arms, she saw a different truth. Love wasn't about what you gave up. It was about what you built. The mural, their relationship, the life they were creating, it was all proof of that. The next morning, Riley woke to a voicemail from Ethan. Her heart sank as she played it, expecting another accusation. Instead, his voice was quiet, almost broken. "I saw the mural on the news, Riley. It's amazing. I didn't know you could do that. I'm sorry. Can we talk?" Riley stared at the phone, torn between hope and caution. She didn't know if Ethan's words were genuine or another ploy, but for the first time, she felt like she had the power to decide. She looked at Ava, still asleep beside her, and made a choice. She'd talk to Ethan, but on her terms, not his. Riley sat across from Ethan at a coffee shop on the edge of Columbus, her hands wrapped around a mug that had long gone cold. The place was quiet, the hum of conversation barely cutting through the tension between them. Ethan, 25, with his messy brown hair and boyish charm, looked smaller than she remembered, his usual confidence replaced by something uneasy. She'd agreed to meet him, but only after setting ground rules. No demands, no guilt trips. She wasn't sure if he'd respect them. "You didn't have to come," Ethan said, his voice low. "I didn't think you would." Riley shrugged, her leather jacket creaking as she leaned back. "I almost didn't. But you said you wanted to talk, so here I am." Ethan fidgeted, his fingers tapping the table. "I saw the mural. It's really something, Riley. I didn't know you had that in you." She waited, bracing for the catch. There was always a catch with Ethan. But he kept going, his words halting. "I've been a jerk. We both have, me and Mom. I didn't realize how much you were carrying until you stopped." Riley's chest tightened. She wanted to believe him, but trust was a fragile thing, and hers had been broken too many times. "You and Mom made it clear you only cared as long as I was paying. You called me selfish, Ethan. You said I was abandoning you." He flinched, his eyes dropping to the table. "I know. I was mad. You've always been the one who held us together, and when you stopped I didn't know what to do. Mom's a mess, Riley. She's not sick, not really, just scared. Scared of losing you. Scared of losing everything." Riley's jaw clenched. "She's scared of losing my money. There's a difference." Ethan didn't argue, and that surprised her. He leaned forward, his voice earnest. "I'm trying to get it, okay? I don't want to lose you. You're my sister. I don't know how to fix this." For the first time, Riley saw a glimpse of the brother she'd grown up with, the one who'd followed her around as a kid, who'd laughed at her bad jokes. But she wasn't that kid anymore, and neither was he. "You can't fix it," she said, her voice steady. "Not by yourself. I need you to see me, Ethan. Not as your bank, but as your sister. As me." He nodded, his eyes bright with something like regret. "Can we try? Really try?" Riley didn't answer right away. She thought of Ava, of the mural, of the life she was building. She thought of the years she'd spent trying to earn her family's love, only to realize it came with strings. "We can try," she said finally, "but it's not going back to how it was. I'm done being the one who pays for everything." Ethan's face softened, and for a moment, Riley dared to hope. They talked a little longer about small things, the mural, his job at a mechanic shop, her plans with Ava. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. When Riley got back to Ava's apartment, she felt lighter, like she'd shed a layer of armor. Ava was at the kitchen table, sketching, her hair falling over her face. She looked up, her eyes searching Riley's. "How'd it go?" Riley sank into a chair, exhaling. "Better than I expected. He's trying, I think, but I'm not holding my breath." Ava reached for her hand, her touch warm and steady. "You're doing the hard thing, Riley. That's what matters." Over the next few days, Riley and Ava settled into a rhythm. They worked on new art projects, planned a trip to a nearby lake for a weekend getaway, and talked about moving in together for real. The mural had opened doors. Local galleries reached out, offering Riley a chance to show her work. For the first time, her dreams felt within reach. But Diane was another story. Riley tried calling her, leaving voicemails that went unanswered. She wanted to believe Ethan's words, that their mother was just scared, but the silence felt like rejection. One evening, as she and Ava cooked dinner, Riley's phone buzzed with a text from Diane. "I'm sorry. I don't know how to do this without you." Riley stared at the message, her heart caught between anger and hope. Ava slid an arm around her, reading over her shoulder. "What do you want to do?" Ava asked. "I don't know," Riley admitted. "I want her to mean it, but I'm tired of hoping for something that might never come." Ava nodded, her voice soft. "You don't have to decide now. You're allowed to take your time." That night, they lay in bed, the city's hum filtering through the window. Riley traced the lines of Ava's face, memorizing the way her eyes crinkled when she smiled. "I love you," Riley said, the words spilling out like a promise. Ava's smile was radiant. "I love you too. And I'm proud of you." Riley held on to those words, letting them anchor her. She didn't know if her mother would ever come around, but she knew she wasn't alone. With Ava by her side, she could face whatever came next. Weeks passed, and Riley's life began to take shape in ways she hadn't dared imagine. The mural had sparked a wave of recognition. Local papers wrote about it, and a gallery in Columbus offered her a solo show. She and Ava spent their days sketching, planning, dreaming of a future where their art could sustain them. But the shadow of her family lingered, a quiet ache that surfaced every time her phone stayed silent. Diane's text had been a flicker of hope, but no calls followed, no apologies, no steps toward reconciliation. Riley tried to focus on the present, on Ava, on her art, but the absence of her mother gnawed at her. Ethan, at least, was trying. He'd called a few times, keeping the conversation light, asking about her work. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. One chilly November evening, Riley and Ava drove to the lake they'd planned to visit, a quiet spot an hour outside Columbus. The water was still, reflecting the fiery hues of autumn trees, and they set up a blanket on the shore, wrapped in scarves and each other's warmth. Ava pulled out her sketchbook, capturing the scene, while Riley leaned back, watching the sky shift from gold to purple. "This is what I want," Riley said, her voice soft. "Moments like this. With you." Ava smiled, setting her pencil down. "You've got me. Always." They talked about the future, moving in together, maybe starting an art collective. Riley felt a spark of possibility, but the weight of her mother's silence pressed against it. "I keep thinking about Mom," she admitted. "I want her to be part of this, but I don't know if she ever will." Ava took her hand, her touch steady. "You've given her a chance. That's all you can do. The rest is up to her." Riley nodded, but the words didn't erase the ache. She'd spent so long believing her family's love was her foundation, only to realize it was built on conditions. With Ava, love was different, fierce, honest, a choice made every day. Riley clung to that, letting it anchor her through the uncertainty. When they returned to the city, a letter was waiting at Ava's apartment, tucked into the mailbox. The handwriting was Diane's, shaky but unmistakable. Riley's heart raced as she opened it, Ava standing close, her presence a quiet strength. The letter was short, raw, and messy. "Riley, I'm sorry. I didn't know how to love you without needing you. I'm trying to learn. Can we talk?" It wasn't a promise, but it was a start, and Riley felt tears prick her eyes. She showed it to Ava, who read it silently, then pulled Riley into a hug. "This is big," Ava said. "It's not everything, but it's something." Riley nodded, her throat tight. "I want to believe her, but I'm scared it's just words." "Then take it slow," Ava said. "You don't have to trust her right away. You get to set the terms now." Over the next few days, Riley wrestled with the letter. Part of her wanted to call Diane, to rush back into the role of daughter, fixer, provider. But another part, the part that had grown stronger with Ava's love, knew she couldn't go back to the way things were. She wrote a reply, short but honest. "I'm glad you wrote. I want to talk, but things have to change. Let's start small." She mailed it, her heart pounding, and felt a weight lift. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a step. She and Ava spent the evening planning their next project, a series of portraits for the gallery show, each one telling a story of resilience. Riley poured her heart into the work, sketching faces that mirrored her own journey, defiant, hopeful, scarred but unbroken. Ethan called the next day, his voice tentative. "Mom got your letter," he said.
She cried.
I think she's starting to get it." Riley's chest ached, but she kept her voice steady. "I hope so. But I'm not going back to how it was, Ethan. I can't." "I know," he said, and for the first time, she believed he meant it. "I'm proud of you, Riley. The mural, your art, it's amazing." The words caught her off guard, a small bridge over the chasm between them. She didn't know if it would hold, but it was enough for now. That night, Riley and Ava curled up on the couch, the city lights glittering outside. Riley felt the pieces of her life settling into place, not perfect, but hers. She'd lost the illusion of her family's unconditional love, but she'd gained something real, a partner who saw her, a purpose that fueled her, a future she could choose. The gallery show was a month away, and Riley's world was a whirlwind of paint, sketches, and late-night planning sessions with Ava. Their apartment was a chaos of canvases and coffee mugs, but it felt like home. Riley's portraits were taking shape, raw, vibrant faces that told stories of struggle and triumph, each one a piece of her own heart. Ava's sketches complemented them, soft and hopeful, a perfect balance to Riley's intensity. Together, they were building something extraordinary. But Diane's letter lingered in Riley's mind, a fragile thread of hope. They'd spoken once, a short call that was awkward but not hostile. Diane had apologized again, her voice trembling, promising to try harder. Riley wanted to believe her, but trust was a slow burn, and she wasn't ready to let her guard down. Ethan, though, was making an effort, small texts, a photo of him at the mural, even a hesitant offer to help with the gallery show. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. One evening, as Riley and Ava worked on a portrait, the doorbell rang. Riley opened it to find Diane standing there, her coat damp from the rain, her face pale and uncertain. Riley froze, her heart caught between shock and caution. "I should have called," Diane said, her voice shaky. I needed to see you." Riley stepped aside, letting her in. Ava stood quietly, her presence a steady anchor. The air was thick with unspoken words, and Riley braced herself for another demand, another guilt trip. But Diane just stood there, her hands twisting, her eyes scanning the apartment, the sketches, the canvases, the life Riley was building. "It's beautiful," Diane said finally, her voice breaking. "What you've done here I didn't know, Riley. I didn't see it." Riley's throat tightened. "You didn't see me," she said, her voice steady but raw. "You saw what I could give you. That's not the same thing." Diane's eyes filled with tears. "I know. I was wrong. I thought if I accepted you being gay, that was enough. But I made it about me, about what I needed. I'm so sorry." The words hit Riley like a wave, stirring a mix of pain and hope. She wanted to believe her mother, but the scars were deep. "I needed you to love me," Riley said. "Not my money. Not my sacrifices. Me." Diane nodded, tears spilling over. "I want to try, Riley. I don't know if I'll get it right, but I want to try." Ava stepped forward, her hand brushing Riley's back, a silent reminder that she wasn't alone. "Why don't we sit?" Ava said, her voice gentle. They moved to the couch, the tension easing just enough to breathe. They talked, haltingly at first, then with more honesty. Diane admitted her fear, her dependence on Riley, her struggle to let go of the role she'd cast her daughter in. Riley spoke of her hurt, her anger, her love for Ava, and the life they were building. It wasn't a resolution, but it was a beginning. After Diane left, Riley felt raw but lighter. Ava pulled her close, their foreheads touching. "You were amazing," Ava said. "You said what you needed to say." "I'm scared," Riley admitted. "What if she doesn't change?" "Then you'll still have you," Ava said, her voice fierce. "And you'll have me." The weeks leading up to the gallery show were a blur of preparation and cautious hope. Diane called more often, asking about Riley's work, listening instead of demanding. Ethan showed up to help hang canvases, his banter lighter, his apologies unspoken but clear in his actions. Riley didn't trust it fully, but she let herself hope. The night of the show, the gallery was alive with light and chatter. Riley's portraits lined the walls, each one a story of resilience, mirrored by Ava's sketches of hope and renewal. Friends, artists, and strangers mingled, their voices a hum of admiration. Riley stood beside Ava, her heart full, her hand in Ava's. Diane and Ethan arrived late, hesitant at the gallery's entrance. Riley's breath caught, but she walked over, Ava by her side. "You came," Riley said, her voice steady. Diane's eyes were bright with tears. I wouldn't miss it. I'm so proud of you, Riley. Ethan nodded, his smile small but genuine. It's incredible, sis. The words were simple, but they carried weight. Riley felt Ava's hand squeeze hers, grounding her. The night unfolded in a haze of joy and possibility, and for the first time, Riley saw her family not as a burden, but as people capable of change. The gallery's show marked a turning point, but Riley knew the road ahead wasn't smooth. Her portraits sold well, enough to fund a new project and cover rent for months. She and Ava moved into a larger apartment, a space filled with light and room for their art. The walls were covered with sketches, plans, dreams, proof of the life they were building together. But Riley's heart still carried the weight of her family, a fragile hope tempered by years of hurt. Diane was trying. She called weekly, asking about Riley's work, sharing small updates about her own life, a new job at a grocery store, a budget to manage her debts. Ethan was steadier too, working full-time at the mechanic shop, even offering to fix Riley's Chevy for free. They were small gestures, but they mattered. Riley didn't trust them fully, but she let herself lean into the possibility of a new kind of family, one built on respect, not obligation. One spring afternoon, Riley and Ava hosted a small gathering at their new apartment. Friends from the art community filled the space, their laughter mixing with the scent of fresh paint and coffee. Diane and Ethan came, hesitant at first, but welcomed by Ava's warmth and Riley's cautious openness. Diane brought a homemade pie, a gesture that felt like an olive branch. Ethan joked with Ava about her sketches, his ease a stark contrast to the anger of months past. As the sun set, Riley found herself on the balcony with Diane, the city sprawling below. I didn't know how to love you right, Diane said, her voice quiet. I thought providing for you meant taking from you. I was wrong. Riley's chest ached, but she nodded. It hurt, Mom, but I want you in my life. I just need it to be different. Diane reached for her hand, her grip tentative but warm. I'm learning, Riley. I promise. Inside, Ava was laughing with Ethan, showing him a new sketch. Riley watched them, her heart full. This was what she'd fought for, not just love, but a life where she could be herself without apology. Her family wasn't perfect, but they were trying, and that was enough for now. The months that followed were a dance of progress and setbacks. Diane slipped sometimes, asking for small loans, but Riley held her boundaries, offering support instead of cash. Ethan grew into a brother she could lean on, his pride in her work a quiet gift. Riley and Ava's art flourished, their projects gaining attention beyond Columbus. They planned a new mural, this one for a women's shelter, a tribute to resilience and chosen family. One evening, as they painted side by side, Ava turned to Riley, her eyes bright. You've changed, she said. You're not carrying the world anymore. Riley smiled, her brush pausing. I'm carrying us. That's enough. They kissed, the paint smudging between them, and Riley felt the truth settle in her bones. She'd lost the illusion of her family's unconditional love, but she'd gained something deeper, a love that saw her, a purpose that drove her, a life she'd chosen. Her family's acceptance had come with a price, but she'd paid it, not with money, but with courage. The mural took shape, a vibrant ode to women who'd fought for themselves, their hands reaching for the sky. Riley saw herself in every line and color. She'd built a family, not the one she was born into, but the one she'd chosen. Ava, her friends, the community they'd created. It was enough. More than enough. As they stepped back to admire their work, Ava's hand found Riley's, their fingers intertwining. The world wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. And Riley knew, no matter what came next, she'd face it with Ava by her side, her heart open, her spirit unbroken.